What's going on? Thanks for coming back to another episode of Aura Audio, and welcome to ROM Hacking Part 2. So if you haven't seen Part 1, make sure to go check that out. Link will be in the description. But Part 2 comes from a recent comment I got from Anil Ramden. I hope I say that right. But anyway, Anil is asking, how can I find the background graphics inside of this game called Rockman Zero 3? So I have the game downloaded right here, and we're just going to go ahead and load it up inside OpenEmu. So that's the emulator we'll be using. All right. So kind of some, I don't know, fight music or something. So I'm just going to skip through all this. So here we got an interesting background. But I'm going to say right here, there's a kind of a cut scene that I think Anil is talking about that kind of comes up here. So right here, you see how, let's pause this for a second and analyze this. We got some mountains in the back, some clouds, some snow, and this nice ground right here. So let's say I wanted to edit the ground right here. How would I go about doing that? Well, that's what I spent the last week kind of messing around with. So let's go ahead and do that. Anyway, so a couple things that I found helpful this week were this first video on understanding kind of the process behind ROM hacking, because it's sort of a whole process. There's these things called pointers, which those can be kind of confusing, but I'll get to them a little bit later. And then there's also palettes, which we kind of went about those last week a little bit, and those are important, and making sure you have the right colors. So I'll link these links down in the description below if you want to check those out, as always. And also, we're going to be using this a lot again today, so make sure to get that loaded up. It will also be in the description. But anyway, let's go ahead. Let's look at our graphic again. So I want to find this snow, right? So how would I go about doing that? Well, let's open up, you guessed it, Tile Molester. Again, the name, I don't know who named it that, but great name. All right, so then we will go to where you download the ROM, so Rockman Zero 3. I hate how it does this, where it doesn't, oh, wow, okay. All right, so there's the ROM. We're gonna load that up, and then full screen, and adjust the canvas, make it a little bit wide. And here's a cool thing you can do. You can save this default palette by saving the palette, just like adding to the palette. So I always like to do that. So now I have the default palette. And now we're just going to go ahead and look for some stuff. So the thing you guys should understand is what we're looking at right now is the game itself. We're looking at all the different parts of the game, and not all of these parts are graphic related. So that's why we see a bunch of garbage here. But we want to find something that is graphic related, because that's what this program is going to do. It's going to parse all that graphic information in a way that we can understand it, which is we look at pixels that come to our eye as light, and that's how we know, oh, that's Mario's face or whoever's face it is. So let's go ahead. Oh, there we go. We got some graphics. But these are not the backgrounds. These look like more characters. So I'm going to go a little bit further. Keep going, keep going. Again, you'll have to search through this a bunch just to find. And this looks like backgrounds right here. So I'm going to go ahead and search through here. And this took me a while, I'm going to admit, but I know where it is now. So we're going to stop right here, because this is important. So you notice there's kind of these scan lines that appear that are just kind of shifted out of place. You want to use this byte forward until those disappear. So see how, like, if I were to move this 4 more, you kind of get that scan line right there. But if I adjust it like this, it's perfect. That's how you want it. You want it so it's perfect. And you see, like, we have a bunch of order right here, which kind of looks like graphics. And then here it just begins garbage. So what you want to do is once you know that thing is adjusted, then you can go to where it begins to become garbage, basically. So right now I have it, it's at offset 00711,390. So I'm going to go ahead and type that into, where did it go? Here it is. So 00711,390. And that's going to give us a decimal number. So we can go to palette, import this file. And again, these text boxes are really messed up, but they do work. You just have to type in them. And wow, look at that. So key things to note that I don't think I covered last week. There's this background, which you see, that's called, I think, the wildcard background. It just means that's the background that the palette or that the graphics sit on. So here they just chose green. And then the rest of it, it kind of makes sense, right? Like you see kind of gradual changes of light, and that's usually a good sign that you found something. So now this isn't the right palette for all of this, but it makes a lot more sense than looking at just complete garbage. So let's say I wanted to find the palette for this. Well, the palette for this is going to be either before it or right after. And so you'll notice like these squares right here. Okay, these are either palettes or they're like pointers to something or something like that. Which pointers, again, we'll get to those, but what they essentially are just pieces in memory that just literally point to something, like point to this data. Like this is a graphic, this is a number. That's what pointers are. And so these might be pointers of some sort, or they could just be some other garbage data that's not related to graphics. But I can tell you right now, if we try switching to this palette, it's just going to be a nightmare. So I tried that one, but it's not related to the palette, so it will become garbage. But these right here, these look potential. Like if you see one of these, let me zoom into this. If you see one of these where it's like, it has green starting initially, like the wildcard background, that's usually a pretty good sign because you know, oh, it has the same background color as the first color, which makes sense. So let's go ahead and click those ones. Whoops, I think I zoomed out too far. So let's go ahead and click that one or select it. So we go all the way down. So it's in the upper right-hand corner, or sorry, left hand. Then we go to Safari and we type in the offset or whatever web browser. I'm just using Safari because Mac, but yeah. If you're on Windows, I don't know if Internet Explorer is still a thing, but or whatever people use these days. But anyway, we're going to put this palette in here, and look at that. We've got our correct palette. So this is the palette for the ground, it looks like. So if we go here, we can see that we found, yeah, it looks the same. I hate this thing right here. Get out of there. So we have kind of this greenish gray floor and then the snow. And so that's looking pretty good to me. I don't know about you guys. Tell me what you think. And then we also have these bluish plants, kind of more background. This is sort of the foreground with the characters, and then this is a little bit background. So we do have those plants right here, but they're kind of a more bluish color, as you can see right there. So we're going to find the palette for those, which is usually right after, it's usually around the same place. Because if you think about it, all these things in the computer's memory are going to be kind of in the same place. Not always, they're going to be a little bit scrambled, but they're going to mostly be in the same area. So if you're like trying to look all the way at the end of the file or the beginning, somewhere completely unrelated, you probably won't have any luck. So always look near the piece of data you're looking for first to find stuff. All right, so I'm going to import that one, paste it there, and look at that. Everything's blue now, but you can see this is just the palette for these plants right here. So if we go back, whoops, nope. When I go to here, oh, what? That just changed. I don't understand. Something think I clicked something. Here we go. Okay. So if we go back here, then we can see that's the same color as those plants right there. And essentially all of this stuff, all of the backgrounds in this game are made up of things called tiles. And so you can see we have the mountain there. We have kind of the clouds right here. So it's a little bit of a mess, but essentially all of these things, the code in the game knows how to put them together to make the graphics that appear on screen right here. And so that's why this video that I linked, this SNES, or SE, Super Nintendo Entertainment System ROM hacking, this video that I linked right here is really helpful because it describes how pointers are important for kind of putting the game's code together. Because we can't really code this game because it's kind of already in its machine code format or its binary format. And so we're just basically looking at what's being read into memory. And it's kind of a mess. It's not always organized. But if you do enough poking around, you can kind of put things together. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to this bottom one. I'm going to go back here. And let's say I wanted to change this graphic. So I'm going to go to that one. And then I'm going to go to Safari again, type in that offset. And here's another useful thing you can do is once I put in this palette, so I go to import and then I type in that again. Once I put in this palette, I could save it. So I could add to palettes and I could say, I would say ground, because that's the palette for the ground right here. And then I could go back to this one, type that in again, right there. That gave me a new number. I'm going to go to import, type in that offset, and I could call this palette, I would call it like the plant palette or something. So now what I can do is I can go to my ground, I can go to my plant, or if I ever get lost for some reason, I can go back to this, which looks like complete garbage. So I'm going to go back to the ground. Okay, so now time to draw some stuff just to see what happened. So I've kind of already done it, but what you can do is you can kind of zoom in here. And then another thing I would do is I would put the tile grid on here and just kind of see where I'm at with everything. And then I'm going to put like whatever, draw something. So I've kind of done that with the spikes, some spikes that I added. So I'm going to go ahead, go to the new file where I've added those. So I have a new file. Nope. I didn't want to click that. I'm trying to get it. So here we go. Okay. Right. So I'm going to full screen that one. Extend the canvas. And then we're going to have to find the palette again. So this will be good practice. Hopefully you guys are following along. So it was about at 7. Yeah, so there we go. And then adjust it so we don't see any scan lines. Yep, that's the scan line. Okay, that's good. Now we're going to go to the best palette we can find, which is right here. I know for sure that's probably palette. And we're going to type that one in. So 00711-3B0. All right, copy that, go to palette, import from this file, paste it in there. And there we go. We got something that at least kind of puts everything into order. It's not the correct palette yet, but kind of puts everything in order. And then I'm going to select this palette, which is our ground palette. So 708 1F0. Copy that, go to palette, import from, and then paste. All right, so we're looking pretty good here. Oh yeah, if I didn't tell you guys also, for the size here, for each palette, I just type in 9999, even though that's not the actual size of the palette, just so I can give myself a bunch of space. But normally you don't need that. It's normally the first thing that you find. So yeah, that's what I type in there, if you were wondering. But anyway, you can see here, I've added some spikes to this layer here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy those that I've added. So how I would do that is I would take the selection tool and I would just select one of those. And I think it's Control C, even if you're on Mac. I know Windows automatically uses Control C to copy. But even if you're on Mac, this program will use that. So make sure to do that. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a little bit and then I can do paste. So I can paste those. And this will kind of show you guys how these are tiled. So let's say I do both of those. What would happen? What's it going to look like? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So I save the game. Then I'm going to go back. I'm going to delete this one. And I'll go here, where it's going to be like all the way at the bottom. Nope, it's not all the way at the bottom. Okay, here we go. Then we go load that one. Skip through all of this. All right, so let's see. Did it change the graphics? Look at that. So you can kind of see it doesn't fill all the space, and that's because each of these tiles makes up a different part of the background. So that's kind of how your image is formed. And it's not always like this, because there could be code in the game that is programmed to draw out a certain pattern. But in this case, the tiles of the background are just stored in the ROM. So that's kind of nice for us because then we know what we're looking for. But the bad part about it is that all of these things are just scrambled. Like, I don't know what's what, so you kind of have to just play around. At least, I'm not a graphics person, so I don't know if there's a better way to go about this, but from playing around with it, you kind of get better at it, and it's just kind of one of the things you have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these ones, because I know that if I start to paste these here, it will start to make it so the floor is continuous, if that makes sense. So it'll make it so there's a continuous amount of spikes just going across the floor. So I'm going to copy that one, and then there's one here as well. And then these four top ones down here, those make up another part of it. And I just did this by fooling around. Like, I just messed around with this thing for a bunch of time. And there's really no other better way to get better at it than just doing that. So yeah, there we go. And now I'm going to select these ones. And this is also part of the ground, so I need to paste those there. So I will do that. Okay, nice. So we got some tiles now. And looks like that's everything. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And if we did it properly, the characters should be walking on spikes. It's going to look really bad, but it will be something. Little steps. We got to work our way up to becoming the pro graphics editors. All right, so let's try this out. Here's the moment of truth. Did it work? Wow. Look at that. There's spikes now. Amazing. So yeah, kind of one of the things that you don't think about when you're playing these games, that all of these backgrounds are kind of stitched together, like literally stitched together, because they're all pieces inside the Game Boy's, the ROM's memory, and they just sort of get loaded into RAM and then kind of stitched together by the code of the game. So I hope you guys learned something today, and I have another part 3 coming out because another person requested a video. So thank you guys for your enthusiasm on this topic. That's all the time I have for today, but I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.